we're off again. Hi everyone.
Tēnā koutou katoa.
So, yeah, I was thinking maybe we should talk a little bit more about the next generation, because I know you're very concerned about our children and our grandchildren. And we started off this series with Pouakai and Tohora showing up, sending us our messages. Of course, all animals speak to us, but they seem to have a specific role, at least in our conversations. They show up with important messages. We've talked about it, and I know that we're, as adult people, are very busy with ourselves. We're very busy with our own development, with our awakening, with our understanding the world, and we have, I don't do this right either, is that I sometimes forget what am I leaving for my children. I know that when I work on myself, I will build a solid ground for them, but it's like we're centuries behind, because if we're now working on our awakening, we're very much connected to ourselves. Of course it begins, because then we can open up to the world if we're in our own center. But there's not a lot of time. And that's what Pouakai and Tohora are telling us. So would you take us with you in your ideas, what they're actually trying to push us to become aware of? We already talked a bit about it, but let's dive into it a bit more. Right. Now you're on.
We're talking about the rangatahi, the youth, the tamariki, the children, and the mokopuna, the grandchildren.
Right.
What they're trying to tell
serious.
us, they're trying to stop us from wiping ourselves out, because that's what we're heading to, rapidly.
That's what Tohora and Pouakai are showing us.
Yes.
Pouakai already experienced this.
Yes.
And he was able, just to recap a bit, he was able to see everything what was going on.
Yeah.
You know, have this overview.
Yes.
And Tohora is carrying all this ancient knowledge as a kind of a library.
Yes.
Swimming the oceans, and it might get extinct if we don't do something.
Yes. So, on one hand we have Pouakai, what we did. On the other hand we have Tohora, what we're about to do. Because as you said about adults, right?
That's us.
Yeah, that's me too. All I notice at the moment is me. It's all about me. That's all I notice today. Or that's all I hear today. Me, not we. Because if we started thinking we, then we'd start seeing our children, our youth, our children and our grandchildren. I say this with great respect though for those who are doing it, but many aren't.
And for those who are open to become aware of it.
Yes,
also,
yes, of course.
Yeah.
You know, we're in all we're in at the moment is rush. And that's what the circumstances out here have made us do. Slow down.
Right.
So we can start seeing, taking a big breath and reassessing what we're doing.
You know, I'm a therapist, and since the lockdown, people get scared of themselves. Get scared of what they find within themselves, because they cannot be busy with the outside world, trying to be someone in the outside world. They're locked down in their own homes, and they have to look at their face and then at the children. They have to take care of the children, homeschool them. It's been crazy and difficult for every one of us.
Of course.
But when you look like a long way back, it was normal to be in those kind of community kind of atmosphere, that you're together with each other.
There's
a
a
lot.
reason for that. Yeah.
Take me with
The
you.
previous generations, what they've been through, and they coped. Now, they're not coping.
No.
And I can say this from experience, from modern, recent experience, that adults are passing their fears on to their children. We've been made to look and reflect. But what I've been asking, or pretty near screaming, with these previous generations, they had them. The end of the war, the 2 world wars, for instance, they had them. Role models. The end of the 2 wars, as I've said to people here, there are 3 generations of women they must honour. That's the mothers, the grandmothers and the great-grandmothers, because they took on the role of many men who did not return from the wars. And that's what I see with the Europeans, is that softness and the gentleness in the men. That's a result of these 3 generations of women who helped the healing. Today we have no role models. Well, when I say that, there are probably some out there, but when I yelled, "Where are our role models?" my answer back to me was, we have 2 generations of drugs and alcohol, so we have no role models left. But the balance of that, I've seen absolute beauty come out of the balance of that. And of course, in this particular environment we're in now, this situation, the beauty is that many of the youth have decided, I'll take on that role, and they are. That's the future, deciding, okay, if you can't get us there, I will lead you there.
Yeah, they have, if you look at the youth, they have enormous ideas. And they seem to be, especially the children of 2000s, the millennium children, they seem to not see impossibilities. And I have a son from 2000, and he doesn't see, well, as far as I can interpret it, but it looks like he doesn't see any impossibilities. Like there are no boundaries. Everything is possible if you're able to and are eager to work on it, or to go for it, to focus on it. Well, some people say they have to go into the school system. I said, if you don't want to, and you want to teach yourself and educate yourself, go for it. Go for it. And so he does. And I know your daughters do have their own path of doing those things too. And it's amazing what they can do.
Yeah, sorry. I'm very passionate about
Go for it. Please share, I know.
But one of the greatest gifts that the young people have today is technology. I don't mean the technology we have now that's been abused. You know, technology today, we have the good and the bad. And then we have a rooster.
I may have to chase it away.
But our youth today, our young people today, imagine the technology that we don't even know about. Imagine the technology of the future that's coming to us, being invented, if you want to call it that, from a pure, innocent mind. Wow! That technology would prove to us that technology can live in balance with nature.
Yeah, right.
Not today's, of course, but yeah, I get excited about the possibilities that the youth can achieve in the future. We have to give them that opportunity to. But I've been talking to many young people lately, and most of them, when I say you're the future, my generation should be listening to what you want us to leave you. or what you want us to do to fix our broken world.
Mm.
And the look on their faces, because until then they hadn't even thought of it that way. But once to be acknowledged like that, you are the solution to our problems, what comes out of their mouths is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And this is from a 12-year-old boy to university students. It's exciting, you know, what they could achieve that we failed at. I mean, my generation, the generation that's created, the generations that have created all of this. Remembering when I talk about the young people, anybody under 60 is a young person to me. But the environmental movement started.
I'm still part of it.
The environmental movement started, I think, in 1980. So that's when this awareness started happening. And it's coming to a head now. It's coming to a peak now.
Yeah.
And surely, after 20 years or even 30 years, I can't remember myself when the movement started, or that awareness of what we do to our planet. And, 20 or 30 years, I think it's about time we started listening. Because we only have a few more years left. It's 11 or 13 years. If we continue down the path we've gone, we've only got 11, I think it's 11 or 13 years left before we reach the point of no return. And so with Pouakai, that's the old, and Tohora, which we'd regard as the new, time-wise.
Right.
Trying to, I say to the youth, we must listen to you. And I can picture Tohora saying to us with the whale songs going through the ocean and over the land now, I can picture the whale saying, please, will you listen to me?
I remember you told us in one of the other talks we had that when you see a whale in the bay, especially your place, where you grew up, then it's the grandmother and the calf.
Yeah.
And I have to think about what used to be the way of living, as I've heard, is that when the parents, the men were out hunting and the women were on land or whatever, the grandparents were taking care of the children.
Yeah.
And it were the grandmothers who knew which child would be a good leader, which child would be a good hunter, which child would be a good medicine man or medicine woman. And that's what I remember now when you talk about it. And then when you say we have no role models, we put our grandparents away.
Yeah.
And nursery houses, elderly homes, and I think it's so important that the younger children grow up with their grandparents. There's a special connection between the both of them.
Well, you've just spoken of the times where everybody lived in the one home.
Yeah.
The grandparents were with, for that reason. The husband is out hunting, the mother is out tending to the vegetable garden, and the grandmother is most probably doing that too, because she'd always be telling the daughter what to do. Yeah. But also tending to the children, but also passing the knowledge down to the children.
Right.
And yes, as you said, recognizing the gifts that each child would have. And that's how, as I said about my tattooing, you earn the right. So I haven't been tattooed yet or traditionally, because I haven't had anybody tell me. I've earned the right to it. And yet young Māori contact me asking me for permission for themselves to be tattooed. And I'm strict, but yes. And so a grandmother in those times, or even a grandfather, would recognize the gift. And of course, that child would grow in that particular field. Because, again, I'm sure it's no different from your ancient culture to mine. Iwi is our word for tribe today. But our old word for tribe was whānau, and we have the same word for family, whānau.
Right.
And of course, and in our times, if a child was chosen to be a chief or a tohunga, a medicine man, or a cook even, a head cook, they earned the right to those positions. And there wasn't any jealousy or any of that sort of. They recognised what they were good at, because the cook might make a terrible chief, or a chief might make a terrible cook, for instance. And so everybody recognised their place in the tribe or in the family.
And every place was important.
Yes.
Because you don't have a good cook, then the chief doesn't have anything.
And the
to
warriors
eat.
can't fight.
No. So, but it sounds simple, but it wasn't always the greatest place to be in when you have your grandmother in your house. But it's so significant, because nowadays we put our children into the school, and everybody has to be within that schedule, and to do this and then do the same exams and stuff like that. My son is one of the first who does an own program on his own, and he's very smart, but he does his own program, which is not allowed in the Netherlands. But they fix it, they do it. He's the first, you know? So I'm happy with it, but it took me almost 8 years to get the system accepting that this was the way we wanted to do it, because he needed that. And it goes for a lot of children. Nobody recognizes their medicine.
Well, like you said, the education system,
I'm getting angry. Sorry. Go on.
I believe, has done its time. If we're to go into our new future, we must go back to the past and have this as our classroom.
Right.
But because we've been in that pool, like the dolphin, for instance, we've been in that pool so long, we've forgotten, because we work for the system now.
Right.
We've forgotten that we are the system. And now we must return to making the system work for us. And again, the rangatahi, the tamariki, the mokopuna, they are the ones I can't change. I'm too bloody old. And made all the mistakes, I suppose. But if we pass as role models, pass to the future generations, the youth, etc., and they bring the new through, because they haven't been tainted by the mistakes that my generation and the generation before me have made. We can pass on those mistakes to them so that they can learn from them, but continue in a new direction. And then they're the ones who can make the system work for them. I don't care about me as long as they achieve that. If they need role models, if they want a grumpy man as a role model, well then I'll be a role model for them. You know?
Grumpy and all.
Yeah, but to guide them, that's what I mean before about role models. There's those 3 generations of women that must be honoured. They guided everyone through what they'd come through, out into the new. Today, it's our younger generations now. They are going to be the guides. They must be guided by us, so they become role models to lead out as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I love, like I said before. I'm seeing young people now taking on that role, because there's nobody there for them.
Yeah, we messed up. Our generation and generation before us, and messed up. And
let's start with my generation before. Because your generation was at the start of the environmental movement as well. 70.
Yeah. 71 I was born, Yeah, so I get it. We should not be too scared to, when they have...
Fear makes you alert.
Yeah. That's okay. But nowadays fear stops us.
Yeah,
and
because you allow it.
Right. We only have to be sharp and alert, but go ahead anyway.
Yeah.
Because it only prevents us from an experience which might turn out really well. You don't know it unless you've done it. So, yeah.
That's where you get the balance. If you've got fear, fear can't exist without fearless. It can't exist. And so if fear is entered, there's the fearless. I'd rather go that way.
Right. Yeah. So, we started our story and our talks with Pouakai and Tohora. I'm trying to connect a bit with them to see how they think of what we shared. How they think about, did they tell everything they wanted to tell? Well, it's a continuous story, of course. It's just a moment in time.
There's many things that can't be told you.
Yeah.
But one thing with Pouakai, yes, he/she is extinct. But I myself personally believe if we are led into a near future by the younger generations, I believe Pouakai will return. You know, I've had the instance 2-3 weeks ago of a friend of mine here in Holland seeing a black deer.
You told me.
And not only the black deer being seen, and for the watchers, she had to make a choice. She saw a black deer playing with a normal coloured brown deer in the paddock in front of her, which was fringed by the forest. But she couldn't believe her eyes, so she had to make a split decision whether she grabbed her camera or her binoculars. Because she grabbed the binoculars to make sure she wasn't seeing things. And by the time she'd reached for her camera, they'd gone into the forest. The bushfires in Australia, as I've mentioned before, you know, plant life that were meant to be extinct, returning. Animals that are meant to be extinct returning means that it's not impossible for Pouakai to return, but also at the same time to stop the extinction of Tohora. Because if Tohora becomes extinct, so do we.
Yes. So Pouakai is actually asking us to make it possible to return, and also for him to connect with his brother in the seas.
Yes. And
not lose him.
You know, if Pouakai came back, he'd be very, very angry, as you know, with how he ended his existence on this planet. I'm sure if he wanted it over again, he'd rather it be a natural journey rather than being competed for with his own food source and then becoming extinct.
Yes. But there's a teaching for him also, because as we discovered the last time, is that he had to go overboard with his fiery energy. Well, he didn't have to, but well, he had to stay alive, but it didn't feel right.
No.
So there is some healing that needs to be done also within its species.
Oh, of course. Of course, well,
it will be a challenge.
All of us.
So, well, it's a bit archetypal also. It's of course a fiery energy, but to me it actually feels like we have to allow each other to go through that process and to make mistakes. And if he wants to return, to give it time and space to feel safe again. Is that bullshit what I'm telling you? That's how I'm kind of picturing it, you know, when he would be in the skies again. It would be like, I hope that we have enough awareness that it will not have to deal with that old pain, but it will be invited to be and roar through the skies.
But for that to happen, like the biggest eagle that flew the skies of the planet. It grew to 280 kilo, quarter of a ton. And same as what you were saying about the windmills. You know, for us to live peacefully together and in balance, we'd have to give up flight, because that's his natural environment, not ours. And who knows, planes might become extinct themselves in the future, or in the near future, if we're all to live in balance with each other. You know, the oceans being allowed to go where they want, and healing itself. Yeah, it has a problem because of the plastic problem, but you know, oceans are able to heal themselves as well. I believe the statistics say if both poles melted, that would naturally heal our planet, heal our oceans.
Because it would clean.
Yeah.
It would. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's going on over there is actually a very natural way
Yes.
of the self-healing process of our planet. Yeah. That's interesting. Never
Another
looked at
thing
it.
I believe, underneath, like the planet underneath both poles, is not round. It's compressed. And so imagine if all that water, all that ice melted, the release from that compressed.
Then we will have some earthquakes also, I think.
Yeah, it'd be big changes.
Yes.
You know?
Wow. So we're kind of in this process of, there's a lot changing in our environment, in our world.
Much of it man-made, and much of it a natural cycle. I must add that.
Yeah, so somehow we have to find that balance again. And I think when we look at the stories of these two magnificent animals, both quite big, you cannot not see them if you see them. One up there, one down there in the water. Yeah, I think we should try to, for ourselves, to get what they try to show us. That's where you have to begin, I think. Just to get it. And then change it into
Remember what
new
I
behavior.
said about technology coming from a pure and innocent mind.
Right, yeah.
Imagine, again, role models guiding our young people, our children and our grandchildren, to hear what Pouakai Tohora are saying, because they'd hear it more clearly because of the innocence and the purity of their minds, and know, I suppose, what to do to put things right, I suppose. And for, you know, because once they tell us what they want, then we listen to them, and then we can go and do the job.
That question will lead us actually in a different direction than our narrow perspective
Yes.
now. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you for joining us and for listening to our stories.
I kept myself calm with rangatahi.
Thank you for being a part of our series, and thank you, Tohora.
Thank you for having me. Tēnā koe. That was what we call hongi, which is our traditional greeting of sharing ha, the sacred breath of life.
And in my own language, I would say, Tige tank mi vreun. Thank you very much, my friend.